Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all fit, well, and healthy, wherever you are in the world. I'm carrying on this little thing that started a couple of days ago by a couple of people on the vinyl community site. Quite an interesting subject. It was a couple of people, and a lot of people now have carried it on, to list your 10 albums that you listen to the most. Yeah, it's certainly an interesting thing. So I thought I'd put my tack on it. Someone mentioned that a lot of people are showing the obvious favourites, but when I look at my musical tastes over the many years that I've been collecting music, it is very, very broad and diverse, So I've picked 10. Some of them are my favourite records. They're probably in my top 10 of all time, but some of them are not. And again, one of the things about this list that people have said is that they're not necessarily their favourite albums from whatever band or musician that they're talking about, but it's the most often that they go to and pick it out and play it and enjoy it. So I've sort of done the same thing, but there are a couple that I've chosen that are my favourites from a particular musician. Okay, what I've tried to do then is mix and match it a little bit, a fairly classic one and then a more modern sort of record. So they're in no particular order, of course. The first one, I do listen to this a great deal, and this is in my top 10 records of all time. Excuse me. And this is David Sylvian, and it's Gone to Earth. I just adore this record. I really, really do. If I'm being honest, I tend to go for it's a double album. The first album is a vocal album, and the second album is an instrumental album. I tend to go for the instrumental album. So if I get the mood to pick this up, put it on, and it happens a lot, believe me, it does, then I tend to go with the second album. There's a couple of musicians on here that really, really stand out. I just love the cover. I think it's a fabulous thing. They've remastered it and put it out again, but without this cover. It's just a black and white image of Sylvian on there, which is bizarre, really. Okay, yeah, there's quite a lot of musicians on here that I really, really do love, but the ones that stand out are Bill Nelson, Robert Fripp, and B.J. Cole. Those three particular musicians stand out on this album for me. I love the whole thing. There's not a weak track on here. So that's my first one then. I go to this. It's certainly, if I was to come across someone that's not heard of any music by David Sylvian, then this would be the one that I would put them onto. So Gone to Earth, David Sylvian. The next one, not a popular choice for a lot of people, but I love this band, and I am not afraid to say that I really, really have a lot of time for this lot. They're aimed at a younger audience, but you cannot get away from the standard of musicianship and songwriting of the band. And this is the 1975, and this tends to be the one I tend to go for. And this is Notes on a Conditional Form. Again, another double album. Let me just take it out of this thing for you. Let's see it a little bit better. There's some great songwriting on here, and this is a proper double album. You're looking at 80 odd minutes here, so um, some great tracks on here. I tend to go. Well, I love it all. Once I put it on, it's one of these albums that I just put on and I just play the whole thing. So, is there a favourite on here? Probably not, to be perfectly honest, because I just love the whole thing. But if I'm being pedantic, I think the third side, so that one there, the 5 songs on that one is brilliant. Or that side, Nothing Revealed, Everything Denied, Tonight I Wish I Was Your Boy, Shiny Collarbone. That's brilliant. Very Brian Eno, that one. If You're Too Shy to Let Me Know, I'm Playing on My Mind. Those 5 tracks are magnificent side of music there. So, third one then. Second one even. The 1975 notes on that conditional form tend to go with this a great deal. I really, out of all the selections I'm showing here, this is probably the one I play the most. I do play this a great deal, and it's obviously Tubular Bells. Well, not obvious, but obvious to me. I have played this album so many times. That's the single that came on Record Store Day. So there's the original album. I've got so many copies of this album, but this is an original black and white Virgin album, as we all know. Oops, light shining a bit there. It's had a 50-year anniversary. I haven't got round to buying that yet because, I really don't know how they're going to improve it, to be perfectly honest. This sounds, and it still does, this is an original 1973 pressing, and it sounds amazing. It really does. The way that Tom Newman and Simon Hayworth have produced this album is top notch. There is a HD CD of this, which sounds very good as well. But I always come back to this. I always come back to this one here. It's fabulous stuff. Okay, so number 3 then, Tubular Bells. I don't know how many times I've played that. A modern one then. This since I've got this record, this came out in when did this come out? 2011. I've played this to death. It's such a special album. It was my introduction and a lot of people's introduction to this amazing German piano player. And this is Nils Fran, and it's felt. Totally instrumental album. Let me just take it out of its thing so you might be able to see it a little bit better. It's a beautiful thing. This was a bit of a eureka moment for me, this one. There's the inner thing. The thing about this album is that Nils, what he did, he recorded it in his apartment where he was living at the time. I think, where was he? I think he was in Berlin, actually. Let me just have a quick see if I can see that on it. No, I don't think it's telling me where it was recorded. No, it's not. I think he was in an apartment in Berlin. And what he wanted to do was to not subject his neighbours to too much noise, because he tends to write and record and play early in the morning, so 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So what he decided to do was to put felt in between the hammers and the keys of the piano that he was playing at the time to try and muffle the sound a little bit. But also at the same time, what he did, he mic'd the piano all over the place, so you can literally hear him pressing the keys on the piano, and you can hear him taking a breath and breathing in between the pieces. It's an extraordinary thing. So, and he writes all about it there, what he did to try and not be too loud. So he placed felt between the strings and the hammers of the piano, so that it whispers. And he said, you can hear myself breathing and panting, and the scraping sound of the piano's action and the creaking of my wooden floorboards as equally as loud as the music. That's very true. It's an extraordinary album. It really, really is. You know, over the last 10 years or so, I think this is one of the albums that I've played the most. It's just a fantastic introduction to the guy, and I bought everything since, you know, and I go back to this all the time. His latest one is pretty good as well, which was a triple album, and that's an intense beast as well, but this is something else. So this is Felt then by Nils Fran from 2011. The next one is a classic. There's not, I don't think a month goes by that I don't play this album, because it's such a wonderful record. And ironically, I think it's a couple of weeks away now, or it actually is a double album that's of people's interpretation of this wonderful chap's music. And what is this one? Nick Drake, key Pinkman. The cover is just something else. I love it. That sums him up, I think, at the time that he recorded this in 1972. It's a wonder that he actually was able to record this. He's on his own with John Wood, basically. That's it. Him, a guitar, and a little bit of a plinkety plonk on the title track, Pinkman. Ironically, he must have thought a great deal of this, because that painting was framed on his wall in his room. So he must have been very proud of what he achieved. And there is one line from a song from this album that's on his gravestone. And the line is, and now we rise and we are everywhere. And that is from the song From the Morning, which is the last track on this proper, really, album that he made. This album, boys and girls, is just a mere 29 minutes long. That's all you need. It's such an intense listen. For me, I've gone on record to say that I do believe this is the finest singer-songwriter album ever recorded. And a lot of people would agree with me there. But coming back to the point I made, is that there are, I think it's 28 different artists that have come together to make this double album of their interpretations of all the songs that Nick, well, not all the songs, but a lot of the songs that Nick recorded in his short life. And I reckon that will get into the charts, because there's a lot of popular musicians and artists on that record. So I just hope that, I mean, he is. He's constantly selling the 3 albums that he made, and that's down to the boss of Ireland at the time, Joe Boyd, that insisted when Ireland was sold to Universal, that he insisted that the titles, the 3 titles that Nick recorded, were to never be deleted. So they were constantly on a release cycle, so people could buy his music, and that's what's continued. So, but out of the 3 of them, this is the one for me. A lot of people go with the one before, Brighter Later, but I'll go with this one. Pink. Great stuff, 1972. Oh, the next one then. We're coming up to, it's just a mere 5 years old, this one. And my goodness, I knew this chap anyway before I bought this album. I followed his whole career, and I think he's made some amazing music. But this is just something else. This is Olafur Arnalds. Remember. Not a month goes by that I don't play this. Every album is done is a cracker, but this seems to be the one that I tend to go back to all the time. And there are 2 tracks that just get me every time. And the first one is Brote. It's a mere 2.5 minutes long. But it's such an intense piece of music. And the other one is Naipe, which is the last track on the album. Don't get me wrong, all 12 tracks are just extraordinary pieces of music. You get this lovely booklet inside, which has all the details of the tracks. I just love the package. It's great. This is what record label was this on? Sunny Classics, I think. Sorry, Mercury Classics. This is on. Very similar artist to Nils Fran, and proof of the pudding is that they're both have recorded together. Olafur, as you can probably imagine from his name, is from Iceland, along with Sigur Rós, who he has supported as well. He's fast becoming, along with Sigur Rós, who are, along with Björk, the biggest names to come out of Iceland. He's fast joining that list. Everywhere he goes, he's sold out. Any show, he can play anywhere, and he has played in some of the biggest halls and concert theatres in the world. When you sell out 3 nights at the Royal Albert Hall and then another 3 nights at the Sydney Opera House, you've made it. This guy is something special. This album then is Remember, and these dots here represent a computer program he was working on at the time called Strutter. And basically, that program allows you to, as long as you've got the program, you can program your keyboard that you're playing, and if you've got another 2 or 3 or 4 pianos, you can program them and you don't have to play them at all. It's a constant cycle of different notes that you program in, and those notes then go from the computer to the piano. So you're not playing the piano at all. And it's beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So there we are. That's my next one then. an album it's never really off my record play. Remember all of our moments. Another classic, one of my favourite bands of all time. And yes, it is my favourite from the band. Don't exist anymore, but it's still constantly on my record player, and it is the Cocteau Twins' Blue Belmont. This is just a magnificent album. Magnificent. I think all three of them now have gone on record to say that was this is their peak. 4 AD, and I know that Ivor Watts Russell, who was the man that was running 4 AD at the time, said that the next one, Four Canley Cafe, was the finest record that 4 AD have ever released, and he's never come back from that. I think it's this one. It's a very short album. It's only 36 minutes, but again, it's such an intense album. I've got to go with what everybody else goes for on here, and that's Caroline's Fingers. What a tune. What a tune. It was never released as a single, but they made a video of it, and it's just absolutely magnificent. And then you've got these 3 closing tracks on the second side: Spooning Good Singing Gum, A Kissed Out Red Floatboat, and Ella Megalast Pearls Forever. The second side is something special. It is something special. But Caroline's Fingers is a special song as well, and it's how this has survived. I don't know. But it has, and I just love this record. I think this is the finest 4 AD record ever released. That's me sticking my neck out. CAD 807, made in England. So the Cocteau Twins then, Blue Belmont. Elizabeth Fraser, yeah, my favourite singer. Such an extraordinary voice. On to then, we're finishing with lots of classics here. On to my favourite musician of all time. And I do get shouted at that, why have you chosen this? Why have you chosen this album? Because I love it so much. That's a simple fact. Is that this for me is Bill Nelson's finest album. I don't think he'll ever make anything as close to this. But he would argue with me about that. And it's when he was calling himself Orchestra Arcana. And this is the Iconography album. This is an instrumental album. And this came out in 1986. And he was way ahead of this could be released today. It's full of samples that he's manipulated with all sorts of different keyboards that he had at the time. There was no digitally computerized things that he could, just slap on here, there, and everywhere. He did it the slow way. So he got his samples. Every track has got a sample on it. Okay. And he then produces the music around the sample. Way ahead of the curve. You could argue that public service broadcasting are doing that now really, really brilliantly as well. But I'm absolutely positive that they must have. There's another album that Bill did as the Orchestra Arcana, and I'm sure they've listened to these albums. This is something else. You've got 13 amazing tracks on here. Is there a favourite? Not really. It's just to be listened to in a oneer. Right Then Left, Eastern Electric. One man's fetish is another man's faith. Absolutely amazing stuff. How he got permission, I don't think he did get permission with the samples. Whereas, public service broadcasting, the way that they go about making their records, they go through the hoops and loops to get the blessing of whatever sample they may want to use for a particular piece, be it NASA or the BBC or whatever they're going to, they have to get permission to do it. I don't think Bill did. What a wonderful album. Very rarely off my record. So, Orchestra Arcana, Bill Nelson, Iconography. My number 9 then. Love this album. And for me, it's all about the second side. Is he my favourite singer-songwriter? Along with Nick Drake, I think he is. He's a national treasure. And it's Roy Harper. And this is Bulling and Min Vase. And it's, for me, there's never a month goes by I don't think I play that. And it's the second side of the album, and it's just one piece, and it's called One of Those Days in England, parts 2 to 10. Totally and utterly extraordinary piece of music. And of course, it's all about living in England and what England stands for and what we used to do in our daily lives. It's just wonderful thing, and it's, it's, is it Roy's? I think I have to say that that One of Those Days in England is probably Roy's finest piece. You'd argue with me on that one, because it's so. When you put the thing on, you're going on the journey with him. Be it your mum rustling up grub while your dad's propping up the pub. That's one of the lines in the song. Wonderful. Travelling on a steam train, pennies here and farthings there, and having to work to survive with little money, and then the joy of saving up and having something special in your life. It's just a wonderful, wonderful piece of music. Very nostalgic, and you've got some fantastic players on here. Now you've got Paul McCartney and Linda on backing vocals on here. Henry McCulloch on guitars is great. Dave Drill on bass, Admiral John Hansley on drums, Dave Lawson on keyboards, Andy Roberts again on guitars. Wonderful, wonderful. Herbie Flowers is on here, Steve Broughton's on here. And then you've got, the full orchestra as well, which normally, when you look at some of his earlier things, it's mainly David Bedford, but not on this. It's Dave Lawson that's doing that. It's great stuff. There he is in the back there. Wonderful album. Wonderful album. If you want a nostalgic trip, telling you all about what England should be like and how it used to be like, and it's not like that anymore, then that's the track for you. Saying that, the first side has got some brilliant, brilliant tracks on it. This is an original. It's got Watford Gap on it. And there's a line on there, and it's Watford Gap, a plate of grease and a load of crap. Well, that was quickly taken get off the album, because there's always a mad song on most of Roy's albums, and that was that one. Don't forget. You've got These Last Days, Cherishing the Lonesome, and Naked Flame. Those tracks are great as well. It's a beautifully put together album. Lovely, lovely album. So it's all for me. One of those days in England. Beautiful. My final one then is never. It's never off the record player, but it's one of these records for me. It's the most beautiful record I've ever heard in my life, and a lot of people can't say this, but I can. This is my favourite record of all time. There we go, and it is Johnsy and Alex, Rice Boy Sleeps. S for me is the greatest album ever recorded. It's not for everybody. It's Marmite. It's an ambient album. It's totally instrumental. It's an emotional roller coaster double album. For those people that don't know, Johnsy is the singer with Sigur Rós, and Alex is an American chap. They were a partnership, no longer, unfortunately. Alex has gone back to America, and Johnsy is in America, but thinking about moving back to Iceland again. But they still collaborate together. Although they're not a partnership anymore, they'd still collaborate on quite a few pieces. So this is Rice Boy Sleeps. It's how to describe this album. It's an ambient album. There's a lot of keyboards on there. There's a lot of orchestra on here as well, and a lot of the strings were done by a quartet called Amina that used to work with Sigur Rós. It's just a monumental album, this one. For me, it's just, I could have picked a Sigur Rós album, but I thought, no, that would be a little bit too obvious. For me, I think there's a track, and it's on the fourth side, and it's called Daniel in the Sea. I've posted it so many times. I think that's probably one of my favourite tracks I've ever heard. It's fabulous. It's quite a long album. You're looking at 70 odd minutes, so it's a lot of music to take in. And for me, because it's such an emotional ride, I can't listen to it all. I tend to put one side on, and then that's too much emotion, and then go to something else, and then play another side maybe a couple of weeks later or whatever. To play it in a one, it's just too much for me. It's just, I never forget it, that I played the first side, and it's 3 songs. It's Happiness, Atlas Song, and Indian Summer. And my den that I'm in now used to be upstairs. And I came downstairs, and I said to my wife, I think I've just played the most beautiful album I've ever heard in my life. And she said, out of all the thousands of records and CDs and everything that you've got, that's the one, is it? And that was in 2009 when this came out. And I said, yeah. And I still stick by that. It's just something else for me. It's a Marmite thing. You either like it or you don't. So there's my tack on my 10 albums that I listen to most. Maybe not the 10 best albums in the world, for a lot of people. Certainly, they're not obvious choices. I know that, and I've sort of gone away from that. But there we are. That's what I listen to the most. Have a great evening then. The sun's come out, thank God. Okay, I'm going to go outside now. Good. Okay. Thank you very much for taking the time, if you have, to watch this, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you very much now. Bye-bye.